Trump, the Department of War launched Operation Epic Fury, the most lethal, most complex, and most precise aerial
This comes as Russia has launched nearly 150 drones against Ukraine, and
more cargo ships are attacked in the Gulf as Iran's new supreme leader vows.
At 6:14 local time, a column of 38 Russian motorcycles accelerates out of a tree line in southern Zaporizhia Oblast, engines screaming across 400 meters of open field toward a Ukrainian trench network designated Point 117. Each bike carries 2 men. One drives, one grips an RPG launcher or a loaded AK-12 across his back. 76 soldiers, no armor, no overhead cover, moving at roughly 60 miles per hour across dirt that has been watched by drone cameras for the past 11 hours straight. The idea is speed. At 60 miles per hour, a motorcycle crosses a kilometer of open ground in about 37 seconds. A Ukrainian mortar crew needs 45 to 60 seconds to adjust fire after a new target is called in. The math, on paper, is simple. Be faster than the correction. Be inside the trench before the second salvo lands. Russian commanders along this section of the front had been briefing this tactic for weeks, pulling from old Soviet doctrine on light, rapid assault, updating it with a piece of equipment that costs roughly $800 per unit on the Russian civilian market. A Chinese-made Lifan or Stelz Enduro bike, stripped of mirrors, stripped of lights, fitted with a crude metal rack for ammunition. $800 against a trench line that Ukraine has held for 9 months. Somewhere in a Ukrainian brigade headquarters 12 kilometers to the northwest, a drone operator watching a thermal feed leans forward in his chair. He has been staring at the tree line since 0300. He has watched the bikes stage. He has watched the men mount. He has counted them one by one, relaying the number up the chain in real time. He is not surprised. He is bored. This is the 4th motorcycle assault on this sector in 6 days. What makes this particular morning different is what has been pre-registered in the fire control system sitting 9 kilometers behind him. 3 batteries of 2 S-1 Gvozdika self-propelled howitzers, each carrying 122mm high-explosive fragmentation rounds, have already plotted the exact grid squares the motorcycles will cross. The coordinates were locked 14 hours ago. The guns are not waiting for a fire mission. They are waiting for a timing call. One word from the drone operator, and rounds that have been sitting in breeches since midnight start flying. Each 122mm round weighs roughly 48 pounds and produces a lethal fragmentation radius of about 30 meters. Against an armored vehicle, that is a nuisance. Against a man on a motorcycle wearing a plate carrier and a helmet, 30 meters is a death sentence, delivered at 2,300 feet per second. The cost of one round is approximately $800, the same price as one motorcycle. The economics of this fight are about to become deeply personal. The column splits into 3 groups as it clears the tree line. 12 bikes veer left toward the southern approach. 14 push straight across the center of the field. 12 swing wide to the right, aiming for a shallow gully that runs within 200 meters of the Ukrainian positions. This is textbook Soviet echelon assault, adapted for 2 wheels. Spread the targets. Force the defender to choose which group to engage first. The 2 groups not targeted close the distance while fire is concentrated elsewhere. Against a single machine gun position, it is effective. Against a networked kill chain with overhead surveillance feeding coordinates to pre-aimed artillery, it is a formation drill performed for an audience that has already written the review. The drone operator transmits the timing call at 0614 and 40 seconds. The first Gvozdika fires 7 seconds later. 9 kilometers to the south, inside the lead group of 12 motorcycles, the driver of the 3rd bike sees the ground 60 meters ahead of him erupt in a column of black dirt and white smoke. He has roughly 1.2 seconds to process this before the second round lands 40 meters to his left. The spacing is not random. It is a pre-planned sheaf. a pattern of impact points designed to cover an area 200 meters wide and 150 meters deep. The artillery crews are not aiming at motorcycles. They are filling a box on the ground with shrapnel and hoping the motorcycles ride into it. At 60 miles per hour, the bikes cover the width of that box in about 7 seconds. The first salvo is 6 rounds. It lands across 4 seconds. 2 motorcycles in the southern group disappear inside the blast pattern. One bike flips end over end, throwing both riders into a shallow crater from a previous strike that has been part of this landscape for months. Another simply stops moving. The thermal feed shows the engine heat signature, but no movement from either rider. 4 men down in 4 seconds. The remaining 10 bikes in the southern group accelerate. This is the moment the tactic is supposed to work. Punch through the first salvo, accept losses, close the distance before the guns can reload and re-aim. A 2S1 Gvozdika has a trained rate of fire of about 5 rounds per minute. That means roughly 12 seconds between shots from a single gun. 12 seconds at 60 miles per hour covers 320 meters. If the bikes started at 400 meters from the trench, and they have already crossed 150 meters during the first salvo, they need to cover 250 more meters. At current speed, that is roughly 9 seconds. The math says they arrive before the second salvo. The math is almost right. What the assault commander did not know was that the 3 Gvozdika batteries were not the primary kill system. They were the door. 400 meters above the field, orbiting in a wide, lazy circle at a speed of roughly 45 miles per hour, a Ukrainian-modified Vampire drone carries 4 RKG-1600 anti-armor grenades on wing-mounted pylons. It has been circling since 0540. Its operator sits in a basement 3 kilometers behind the front line, watching the same thermal feed as the artillery observer, but through a different camera with a narrower field of view. His job is not the groups. His job is the gaps. The individual bikes that survive the sheaf, that weave through the craters, that make it past the artillery and think the worst is behind them. His job is the last 200 meters. The first RKG-1600 releases at 0615 and 22 seconds. It falls for roughly 3 seconds before its small stabilizing parachute deploys, orienting the shaped charge warhead downward. It was designed to punch through the top armor of a tank. Dropping it on a motorcycle is like using a sledgehammer to crack an egg, except the sledgehammer costs about $300 and the egg thinks it is moving too fast to be hit. The grenade strikes the dirt 2 meters ahead of a motorcycle traveling at roughly 55 miles per hour. The rider has no time to swerve. The blast throws shrapnel upward and outward in a cone that catches both the bike and its passenger across the chest and face. The bike continues forward for another 30 meters, riderless, before tipping into a rut and stopping. The passenger, the man with the RPG, is gone. There is no thermal signature on the feed. The drone operator is already steering toward his second target. 3 kilometers to the east, the center group of 14 motorcycles is having a different experience. Their approach crosses a section of field that was not pre-registered for artillery because 48 hours earlier it was still soft mud from spring rain and considered impassable for bikes. It dried overnight. The assault planners noticed. The Ukrainian fire control system did not update. For 22 seconds, the center group rides through clean air with nothing falling on them. This is the genius of the Russian plan, and it deserves recognition. Someone on the Russian side studied the ground. Someone checked the weather. Someone realized that a field that had been mud on Monday would be hard-packed dirt by Wednesday, and that the Ukrainians would not have registered it as a viable approach because their last reconnaissance was 36 hours old. That someone was right. 14 motorcycles and 28 soldiers crossed 200 meters of open ground completely untouched. They are 200 meters from the trench. At current speed, they will arrive in 7 seconds. The RPG gunners on the back seats are already lifting their launchers. Then the FPV drones arrive. They come in from the northeast, 6 of them, launched from a position inside a destroyed barn 4 kilometers behind the trench. Each one is a crude assembly of carbon fiber, a lithium battery, a camera, and a warhead pulled from an RPG-7 round strapped to the nose. Each one costs approximately $500. Each one flies at about 90 miles per hour with an operator guiding it through a set of goggles that show exactly what the drone's camera sees. 6 operators, 6 drones, 6 targets selected from the center group based on a simple priority system. Kill the bikes carrying RPGs first. Kill the bikes carrying machine gun ammunition second. Kill whatever is left third. The first FPV drone hits a motorcycle head-on at a combined closure speed of roughly 150 miles per hour. The RPG warhead detonates on impact. The bike, the driver, and the RPG gunner cease to exist as separate objects. The thermal camera registers a single bright bloom that fades over 3 seconds. The second FPV drone arrives 1.5 seconds later and strikes the bike immediately behind the first, catching the driver in the side of the torso. The bike spins sideways, and the passenger tumbles across the dirt for 40 meters before the thermal feed shows him motionless. 4 men eliminated in under 3 seconds for a combined cost of $1,000. The remaining 12 bikes in the center group scatter. This is the natural reaction, and it is the wrong one. A tight formation presents a single target picture to a drone operator. A scattered formation presents 12 individual targets, each one easier to track because the background is now empty dirt instead of a cluster of heat signatures. The drone operators do not rush. They pick targets methodically. 1 bike every 4 to 6 seconds. The gap between the second and third kill is 5 seconds. The gap between the third and fourth is 4. Each drone flies a terminal sprint of roughly 3 seconds from its loiter position to impact. The motorcycle riders can see them coming. A few try to swerve. At 90 miles per hour, an FPV drone can adjust its course faster than a motorcycle can change direction on broken ground. The operators are not performing miracles, they are performing geometry. By 0617, the center group has lost 8 bikes. 6 remain, and they have stopped advancing. 2 have turned around entirely, heading back toward the tree line. 4 have dismounted, abandoning their bikes in the open and crawling toward a shallow depression 100 meters short of the Ukrainian trench. They are now infantrymen in the open with no cover, no vehicle, and no suppressive fire, 100 meters from a defended position that knows exactly where they are. The drone feed shows them clearly. The trench garrison does not need to expose themselves. A single DSHK heavy machine gun, firing 12.7 millimeter rounds at a rate of 600 per minute from a covered position, opens up at 0617 and 30 seconds. At 100 meters, the gunner does not need to aim carefully. He needs to aim generally. 800 meters to the south, the remnants of the southern group have fared slightly better. 3 bikes made it through the artillery sheaf. 3 bikes carrying 6 men reached the outer wire of point 117 and dismounted. For roughly 90 seconds, there is an actual close-quarters engagement. Grenades fly in both directions. A K-12 fire cracks against the dirt walls of the trench. A Ukrainian soldier in the forward position is hit in the shoulder and pulled back by a squad mate. This is the only moment in the entire 8-minute engagement where the Russian assault achieves what it was designed to achieve. 6 men inside the wire fighting for a trench. It lasts 90 seconds. A Ukrainian reserve squad, 8 soldiers who have been sitting in a covered bunker 70 meters behind point 117 for exactly this contingency, moves forward through a communication trench. They arrive behind the 6 Russian soldiers who are focused entirely forward. The geometry of the trench means the Russians cannot turn to face the new threat without exposing themselves to the original defenders. They are caught in a 15-meter-long section of trench with fire coming from 2 directions. In 40 seconds, it is over. 4 of the 6 Russian soldiers are killed, 2 surrender. The Ukrainian soldier with the shoulder wound is evacuated by the same communication trench 12 minutes later. The right flank group, the 12 bikes that swung wide toward the gully, never reaches the trench at all. The gully that was supposed to provide cover from observation turns out to be pre-registered for airburst munitions. At 0616, a volley of 6 rounds of 122mm ammunition fused for airburst detonates 15 meters above the gully at staggered intervals. Airburst fragmentation in a confined space is a physics problem with one answer. The fragments travel downward into the gully at roughly 3,000 feet per second. The walls of the gully that were supposed to protect the riders from observation instead trap the shrapnel inside the channel, bouncing fragments off hard-packed dirt walls. 11 of the 12 bikes are destroyed or disabled within 8 seconds. The thermal feed shows scattered heat signatures, but almost no movement. One bike, the last in the column, manages to brake and reverse out of the gully entrance before the final rounds land. It retreats toward the tree line at roughly 40 miles per hour, wobbling on the uneven ground, carrying 2 men who are now the only members of the right flank group still mobile. At 0622, 8 minutes after the first motorcycle cleared the tree line, the field is quiet. The drone cameras continue to orbit. The thermal feeds show 23 destroyed or abandoned motorcycles scattered across an area roughly 400 meters wide and 350 meters deep. The remaining 15 bikes are accounted for across a combination of retreated, destroyed in the gully, or stopped in the open field with no riders. Of the 76 men who crossed the tree line, Ukrainian after-action reporting will later claim 54 killed or wounded and 2 captured. 20 men made it back to the tree line. Some of them were passengers from bikes whose drivers did not make it, running the last 200 meters on foot. The entire engagement, from first engine to last gunshot, took 8 minutes. The total cost of the Russian assault, at a conservative estimate, is roughly $30,000 in motorcycles, plus personal equipment, weapons, and ammunition carried by 76 soldiers. The total cost of the Ukrainian defense is approximately $4,800 in artillery shells, $2,000 in FPV drones, $300 in a single RKG-1600 grenade, and roughly $600 in heavy machine gun ammunition. Call it $8,000 to destroy a $30,000 assault. In a war where both sides are burning through equipment at industrial rates, the economics are not close. Russia spent nearly $4 for every dollar Ukraine spent to stop them, and received nothing for the investment except 20 survivors and a field full of cooling engines. The motorcycle assault tactic did not begin here. It emerged in late 2023 along the Donetsk front as a response to a specific problem. Russian armored vehicles, even modernized T-72B3 tanks costing approximately $3 million each, were being destroyed by FPV drones and anti-tank missiles at rates that made armored assaults economically unsustainable. A tank costs $3 million. A Javelin missile that kills it costs $178,000. An FPV drone that kills it costs $500. The math pushed Russian tactical planners toward the cheapest possible vehicle that could still carry a soldier across open ground. The motorcycle emerged not from doctrine, but from desperation. It is the answer to a question nobody wanted to ask. If you cannot afford to protect the soldier, can you afford to move him fast enough that protection does not matter? For the first 3 weeks, the answer appeared to be yes. Ukrainian forces along multiple sectors reported motorcycle assaults breaching trench lines that had held against armored pushes. The speed genuinely worked. Mortar crews could not adjust fast enough. Drone operators trained to track vehicles moving at 15 to 25 miles per hour struggled with targets moving at 60. The tactic achieved local breakthroughs in at least 4 documented positions along the Zaporizhia and Donetsk lines. Russian military bloggers celebrated. Telegram channels posted helmet camera footage of riders reaching trenches, dismounting, fighting. The motorcycle units earned a reputation. They were fast. They were fearless. They were, for a brief window, effective. The window closed because Ukraine adapted faster than Russia expected. Artillery pre-registration eliminated the advantage of speed by removing the need to aim. FPV drone operators developed intercept techniques specifically for fast-moving ground targets. Thermal surveillance made nighttime assaults, which had initially offered some concealment, almost as visible as daytime attacks. And the brutal arithmetic of attrition did the rest. A motorcycle assault that loses 70% of its force and takes no ground is not a tactic. It is a delivery service for casualties. The 38 motorcycles that crossed that field at 0614 were ridden by men from a Russian unit that had been reconstituted twice in the previous 4 months. Reconstituted is the official term. What it means is that the unit suffered enough casualties to be combat ineffective, was pulled off the line, filled with replacements, given a brief training period, and sent back. Some of the men on those bikes had been in Ukraine for less than 3 weeks. They were told the speed would protect them. They were told the artillery could not adjust fast enough. Both statements had been true, once, on a different part of the front, against a different Ukrainian unit, before the adaptation. They were no longer true here. Nobody updated the briefing. The 2 prisoners taken from the trench at point 117 were transported to a brigade holding facility 18 kilometers behind the front line. During initial processing, one of them, a 22-year-old private from Chelyabinsk, reportedly asked the Ukrainian soldier escorting him how many drones had been in the air. The soldier told him. The private said the briefing mentioned 0 drones. He said they were told the area had been suppressed. Russia was about to find out that suppressing a Ukrainian drone network is like trying to empty a river with a bucket. You can remove what is in front of you. More is always coming. The field where 38 motorcycles made their run sits in the same open steppe that has swallowed armies for centuries. The dirt dried overnight and will turn to mud again with the next rain. The craters from the artillery rounds will fill with water and become indistinguishable from the thousands of other craters that pockmark every square kilometer of this front. The motorcycles that were not recovered will rust in place, their $800 frames settling into the same soil as the remnants of tanks, armored personnel carriers, and infantry fighting vehicles that cost 1,000 times more and met the same end. The war does not grade on price. It grades on results. 76 men crossed a field on motorcycles. 20 came back. The assault cost Russia roughly $4 for every dollar it cost Ukraine to stop it, took 0 ground, and delivered 2 prisoners to the other side. The most feared motorcycle troops in the Russian order of battle entered Ukraine's kill zone at 0614 on a Wednesday morning. By 0622, the fear was gone. The motorcycles were still there, scattered across the dirt like discarded toys cooling in the morning air. The men who rode them were not. If you enjoyed this video, check out our other video on how Ukraine's FPV drone units are trained and deployed along the front line. Bye for now.